Your home for the most live sports. And the White Sox take the field on a very dreary, rainy evening. It's 54 degrees, but the rains have gone away. There will be baseball in the third game of the four-game series as Carlos Rodon goes to the mound for his third major league start. So let's take a look at how Terry Francona is going to line up his Indians. Jason Kipnis, who's been red hot, is leading it off. Then it's Jose Ramirez at shortstop with Michael Brantley, their all-purpose everything player. Brian Rayburn, who historically has torched the Sox with 79 runs batted in, is hitting fourth. Nick Swisher, the DH, with Mike Aviles, Brandon Moss, Roberto Perez, and Michael Bourne in center field, hitting ninth. The defense and how they're going to line up behind the young left-hander. Melky Cabrera, Adam Eaton, and Abisail Garcia in the outfield, with Connor Gillespie, Alexi Ramirez, Carlos Sanchez, and Jose Abreu in the infield. Tyler Flowers will get the nod behind the plate, and Carlos Rodon on the hill. He's 1-0 this year. His ERA a little higher than he would like. It's been the walks that have been the problem, 14 of them in 16 and a third innings. He realizes that perhaps he's overthrown a bit, but he's got great stuff, and he's got a very bright future. The umpires for the game tonight. Dale Scott is behind the plate. Larry Vanover is at first, Ron Culpe is at second, and Brian Knight is at third. Carlos has a couple of different sliders. One's a wipeout slider, about 90-91 miles an hour. That one winds up in the dirt, but as a wipeout pitch, he gets a lot of swings and misses. The other is a get-me-over, about 84-85 miles an hour, and he's also going to have to throw his fastball a couple of different speeds. Right now he can top out at 97, and that's awfully good, especially when you get ahead, when you keep it up high. He would like to get ahead of hitters, and that comes with innings. It comes with experience, and being a very young pitcher, and this is his first go-round in the major leagues, this game has a lot to teach you, and the young man is going to learn it a little more quickly than most. He's got a great arm, and I believe he's going to figure it out pretty quickly. So they've thrown the ball around the infield, which means we're ready to play baseball, and I'm ready to turn it over to my play-by-play partner, Ken Harrelson.
Hi, Stoney. Thank you. And once again, good evening, everyone, and welcome to White Sox baseball right here over WGN Sports, My 50. As Jason Kipnis will lead it off. Kipnis hitting at .338, 4 homers. He's driven in 17. He's 2 for 7 in this series, and the first pitch of the ball game. Taken for a strike. Resisted. Little first pitch get me over fastball at 90. And the count 0-2. Indians come in hitting at .252 as a club with a 4.35 ERA. And there was an official 31-minute delay. He gone.
And that was a very good sequence for Carlos, because he set him up, and that put-away slider gets him.
That was a little reminiscent of a left-handed Kluber curveball the other night.
He hopes that he has one of those. So does just about everybody else.
Well, if you missed that game the other night, our Chris Sale was just brilliant. Kluber was just brilliant. One of the best ball games we have seen in a very long time. And that ball is hit back through the middle by Ramirez, who continues to play very well against us. Well, came in hitting just 185.
He came into this series hitting 168. Yet he drove in a run in the opener. He drove in a run last night. And he takes that one right back through the middle. It's a fastball down. And he tries to set it up for Brantley.
And he's 4 for 8 so far in the series. Brantley 1 for 8 in the series. He has faced Carlos one time, and he has a hit. 1 for 1 with an RBI. This is the 8th meeting of the year between these two clubs. In the first 7, we have won 4 of them. And here at the ballpark, 330 down the left field line, 335 down the right field line, 375 in the gaps, and 400 straightaway center. That's high. That's a can of corn to Melky. Two down. And that'll bring up Ryan Rayburn, who had one of the hits in that relief appearance that Carlos had a tough time against Cleveland earlier, but that was just a broken bat single that knocked in a couple of runs.
Problem was, in that situation, you couldn't very well pitch around him, and Rayburn did what he has done consistently throughout his career, wearing either a Tiger uniform or an Indian uniform. He's torched the Sox.
Yeah, every time he puts the bat on the ball. I mean, it's been amazing. He's taking over. Now nobody will ever take over Jim Thome's place as a Sox killer, but Mike Sweeney and the rest of the guys, Jermaine Dye, he's right up there with those guys.
79 runs batted in. Better than the next three teams added up together. So for whatever reason, and nobody can ever figure it out, you have teams where you can't hit anything. You have teams where you hit everything. And this is one of those teams. This is the team for Ryan Rayburn.
There he goes. Tell you what, there was a good effort by Tyler. That ball was tough catch and throw. He did it to the best he could.
That was just running on first move. That was a great jump by Ramirez. As you can see, he's off to the races. And this one shouldn't have been close. It turns out to be very close as Tyler handles it well, gets the throw off quickly. From a catching standpoint, you can't do it any better than that. He just stole that one on Rodon.
Yeah, that's about as quick as you can get it down to second base on a stopwatch. Two out, 2-1 to count. Nick Swisher on deck.
Carlos has struck out at least one man in his last 11 innings of work. That's the second longest active streak in the major leagues, which shows you how good his stuff is.
Pretty good.
Good hard slider low and in, and he gets the benefit of the call from Larry Vanover. That could have easily have gone the other way. It didn't, so now you have to face Swisher to get out of the inning.
That's a pretty good job of laying off that pitch because it did have part of the zone. It was a strike. So here's Swisher. Swish 1 for 6 in the series, comes in hitting at .227.
First and second and 2 outs. Indian hitters have driven in at least one run 14% of the time. Sox pitchers have given up at least one 15% of the time. And as you can see, league average, the Indians are below, and Sox pitchers are better than league average.
And that pitch just off the plate.
So Tyler's going out there to settle him down. Looked like it might have been an easy inning, but it's not turning out that way. It's pitch number 14 on the way.
And there's a strike. Outfield for the most part straight up, bit of a gap out there in right center. As there is another strike. So 2 on, 2 out, 2-2 the count here in game 3 of this 4-game set and game 3 of this 7-game homestand. 4 with these guys and finish it off Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. 3 against Minnesota, and of course Saturday. Still some standing room tickets available for Paul Konerko. His number is being retired. All right, he's going to get out of it, and that'll retire the side. They threaten, can't score. And after half inning of play, the Indians nothing, and the good guys coming to bat.
Adam LaRoche, Avisail Garcia, Connor Gillespie, Lexi Ramirez, Tyler Flowers, and Carlos Sanchez playing second and hitting 9. The defense and now the lineup behind Sean Markham. It's Brantley, Bourne, and Rayburn in the outfield with Aviles, Ramirez, Kipnis, and Moss in the infield. Roberto Perez once again behind the plate. And the veteran Sean Markham on the hill. One appearance this season against Detroit. He actually threw the ball pretty well. And that was a relief appearance. So he's getting his start and hoping to resurrect what at one point was a pretty good career.
At one point had the best right-handed changeup in the league, or as good as any other right-handers.
It was something special when he first came up with Toronto. Had a few injuries there. Had a 12-6 year in 2007.
And before we show you our picks to click, you at home select yours. There's Adam hitting at 233. He's 2 for 8 in the series. Scored a very exciting run in game 1 to tie that game at 1. Corners in close. And there's the strike. Sox come in hitting at 253 as a club with a 4.25 ERA. Sox 11-6 at home. Cleveland 9-11 on the road.
That's a changeup, and it's a good one. You can't really pick it up with arm velocity or release point. With Toronto in 2010, he was 13-8. Went to Milwaukee in 2011, was 13-7 with an ERA of 3.5. Those were a couple of very good years back to back.
Little chin music and a full count. Steve, I'm a firm believer that the next plateau in baseball or in sports, as you look at the high inside pitch, almost everything has been tried, and even this to a certain degree, but it's really to a much lesser degree. I'm a firm believer the next plateau of teaching and improving yourself is visualization.
Well, that comes down to the mental aspect of the game because it's all a part of it. And I think physically, Hawk, we're getting about as big and as strong as quick as we can get. Maybe it'll move by incremental advances on a yearly basis, but the mind is unlimited. And I think that's part of it. Visualization is part of the mental aspect of the game, which has a great deal of expansion left in this game.
There's no question. On a scale of 1 to 10, it's probably at 1/10 or 100th of 1%. As here is Cabrera, and the reason I brought that up is because guys like Markham, guys of that ilk, guys in the lower tier who or iffy at best at being a major league pitcher. Now, he's had his time before, and he was good. Lost it. He didn't pitch last year. But the point being is that I firmly believe a guy like him who's got a good changeup or has to have a good changeup should get films of a guy like a Stu Miller, formerly of the Baltimore Orioles. And look at what he did to make that changeup almost impossible to hit. And with Stu, it was a head shake. He shook his head. Just before he'd throw his pitch, he'd just shake his head. And for some reason, that made him almost unhittable.
Well, because people are swinging at the motion as opposed to the baseball, which is what you're trying to get a hitter to do.
Well, they used to tell you when I hit against him, and they would tell you, get past the head shake. Well, that's a little easier said than done. But hitters, pick out a guy who is similar to you as size, strength, whatever. If you're failing, and study some film of them. Don't study film of yourself, because first of all, there's no sense in looking at yourself unless you know what you're looking for. Melky, 2 for 8 in the series, 7 for 18 lifetime off Markham. Now 7 for 19 and 2 out.
Markham's had a couple of longer at bats. He doesn't really need those. He wants to get you to swing early in the count, because his stuff at this point is limited. He's had so many injuries during the course of his career. His last outing in the National League was with the Mets, where he was 1-10 with an ERA up over 5 in 2013. The Indians signed him as pretty much a hope shot. You sign him, you see what happens. You sign him to a minor league contract and see if he can get back to what he was, or close to it.
You know, I used to be a huge reader of self-help books, you know, and I came to the conclusion most of them are BS. Because they're always, that's off the end of that. The best book that I ever read about the mind is called The Power of Your Subconscious Mind by Michael Murphy. And it was unbelievable, because you could absolutely transpose that into anything. It was not about golf, but I did it in golf. I wish I'd have had it when I was playing baseball as a ball and to count 2-1. But and that's what the theme of that whole thing was, visualization.
One day we have a little time, I will sit down and tell you how I resurrected my career after being under 500, going to Baltimore and using a complete set of mental gymnastics to be able to change what I felt was an underachieving career to that point, and parlay it into a really good run with the Orioles. But it had to do with a lot of things, visualization being one of them, self-hypnosis something else. But you have to get to the point where you eliminate all distractions and then use your mind to try to outthink the other guy.
That's into center field. Michael Bornes there. So a 1-2-3 inning for Sean Markham. Brandon Moss, the first two, and then Brett Hayes, a catcher. Bealey's hitting at 276. A couple of homers. He's driven in 4. Takes ball 1. Bealey's 1 for 6 in the series. 34-year-old veteran. Outfield swung around to the right for him, where he predominantly, like there, right there, goes into right field. So he leads it off with a single.
That is the prototypical Mike Avila's hit. Doesn't matter where the pitch is. In this case, he brings his hands in, still gets it on a nice part of the bat, but takes it to right and right center field, which is what he does, except on a slow breaking ball. That one he'll pull, but other than that, he's going the other way.
Well, you know, getting back to the visualization, Ted Williams, the great Ted Williams, arguably certainly one of, if not the best hitter to ever play the game. As that ball popped up. Every day at home, because they didn't have iPads and iPhones back in this day.
No. If they did, that'd be a story.
Every day he'd go to the ballpark, or before he went to the ballpark, he'd call Helen. He'd say, okay, which way the wind's blowing, who's pitching for them, and do you know who's umpiring behind the plate? That's the 3 things he wanted to know. So he'd go to the ballpark, he'd think about that. He'd go to the ballpark, he'd get there very early all the time. He was always one of the first there. And he would sit in front of his locker, and before he faced that guy, say it was Bob Feller, he had had 4 at-bats against Bob Feller, visualizing his best fastball and his best curveball, because he was basically a 2-pitch pitcher. And he'd just go over in his mind, visualizing his best fastball and his best curveball. Best fastball just off the plate, best curveball just a little too low.
That's why in this day and age, you see a lot of sports psychologists employed by many teams. And it's probably a good thing to have a couple of different people. One, a performance coach who's actually done the particular task that you're asking your player to do. Because there's no doubt, my estimation, you got 10% of the guys that are superstars and 10% of the guys that are at the bottom of the scale, leaving in 80% of the players in the middle who essentially have the same ability. There's a reason why guys perform at the top end of that 80% and the bottom end. That is strictly their mind. The guys who are able to harness their mind get the most out of what they have every day, because the most you have every day isn't 100%. You have to play with less than your best regardless of what position you play at. And the guys who can harness the mental aspect of the game are the guys that will be infinitely more successful.
That pitch is fouled back.
It's going to be interesting to see what they do with the catching position when Yan Gomes comes back, because we have seen them employ Hayes. Perez started the first 2 games, and they're not going to carry 3 catchers.
Well, Yan Gomes is going to play.
Yeah.
That's into. That's the ball's hit hard, but he corrals it for out number 2.
They miss Yan Gomes. They miss what he can do. Forget the offensive aspect, because it's pretty good. He's a good offensive player. But what they miss is his control of the pitching staff. And they have a very good pitching staff that hasn't yet been what they think it's going to be. Their starting rotation is exceptional, and they do have a good bullpen. This team will play a whole lot better than they've played in the early going. And so they will be a force. And again, with your philosophy, if it's not who you play, it's when you play them. The teams that are going to play the Indians coming up in a couple of weeks or so, when Gomes comes back and is ready to go, they're going to have their hands full. This is going to be a team that's tougher to beat than they are now.
This is a good ball club.
Yeah.
Cleveland is a good ball club. There's no question about that. You can run some of those starting pitchers they got out there, especially the top 3.
And Salazar, being the 4th, he got sent to the minor leagues, seemed to have figured out exactly what it was they want him to do, and now he's pretty good again.
Well, if you throw him in that back mix of the top 3, then they're definitely double tough.
Yeah. Salazar has come back. He's now 4-1 in 6 starts. They just sent him to the minor leagues to remind him that you've got nothing made in this league. You have to work hard each and every day, and he's learned that lesson.
You know, you can run Kluber, Bauer, Roscoe, and a revised Salazar mentally. I'm talking about.
Pretty good.
Yeah. Michael Bourne hitting at 225. No homers. He's been watch out. A little chin music.
That was a breaking ball at 81. Slipped out of Carlos's hand. It's a cool night. Of course, it's easier for us to say that it was a little breaking ball at 81 than it is to take a look at it, be standing there and see it come at your head.
I remember one of the times I got hit in the head 3 times. One of the times Sonny Siebert threw me a curveball and I stuck my head right into it. He didn't hit me, I hit myself. There he goes. And he's safe.
Unfortunately, the best throw was in a situation where he couldn't get Ramirez, and this one was up. Aviles was in. And like Aviles, who at 36 doesn't have the great speed anymore, is able to steal his first bag. The throw is not a good one. Aviles is in under the tag, and he's now 1 for 1 in the stolen base department.
No, if Tyler gets off anything close to that first throw, he's gone. Full count. Looked like Tyler just didn't quite find the ears on it and hesitated just a tick on the throw. He gone. Second strikeout. And that'll do it. No score after an inning and a half.
Chi Sox game day, as you might be today's White Sox fan of the game. White Sox fan photo of the game is brought to you by Beggar's Pizza, now with 22 locations. Visit beggarspizza.com. Beggar's Pizza, they lay it on thick.
Here's LaRoche. Adam hitting at 225, 4 homers and 16 knocked in. Takes first pitch strike. Adam has faced Markham 5 times, has 1 hit. And that hit left the premises. There's that change and the count 0-2. You know, that's the way of the future. We're talking about that, and having team psychologists. Well, the White Sox actually were the first team to bring in a team psychologist back in the early 80s. We've got a terrific one now, Dr. Jeffrey Fishbein, and he is really great to talk to. As that pitch misses. And you were talking about yourself when you resurrected your career and went out and won a Cy Young Award. Watch out, Sean. Wow. Boy, he almost got dehorned right there.
We threw him a fastball, and at 86, if you throw it down the middle, you're not going to get it by too many people. Take a look at the location of this one. That fastball down the middle, fortunately, he was able to duck under it.
Well, you can throw it at 86, but he can't throw it down the middle.
No.
He can throw it underneath his hands, let him pull it hard foul. So here's Avi at 336, 4 homers and 18 knocked in. But we're seeing that in golf. There's a golfer named J.B. Holmes who had a good streak last month.
Tremendous physical talent, can hit the ball 8 miles.
But he closes his eyes before every shot and visualizes the shot. And he's been doing that ever since he's been doing that. He's been back in contention and winning. Another guy who has helped a lot of golfers is a guy named Bob Rotella.
For years, Bob Rotella's been around doing that. And
yeah.
Years ago, John Smoltz was one of the first guys to really employ one on a full-time basis, and it completely changed his career around because he was always known as a guy with overwhelming stuff that could never really harness it. But all of a sudden, when he learned how to harness it, you're talking about a Hall of Fame career.
Well, there's a doctor down here in Oakland, Dick Schwartz, Dr. Dick Schwartz, who's a fantastic guy to talk to. Psychologist. A friend of mine was going to see him, so I wanted to see what my friend was going through. So I scheduled an appointment with Dr. Schwartz. Never met the man. You know.
That's why he was so good.
Well, I was sitting in there for half an hour, and I was crying. He had me in tears. He had me thinking about things that I had thought about since I was 6 years old. But as that ball hit high and deep, it's not going to carry at night. Back out there on the track, boy, on a regular night, that's gone. And the one that Melky Cabrera hit last night was out of here with the regular. So with 1 out, let's check out our picks to click tonight. Manjo, our director of the crew. Well, they went to Lexi. Steve's going with Adam LaRoche. And Mike Mazza, Ken Wiz, Tom Eichstadt, Pete Catazone, Laura Arenas, Mary Weiss, Nick Bristow, Rob Boaz, and Tom Sheridan and I, we're going to go with Melky Cabrera. Here's Gillespie. Of the future. It's not going to be mechanics. It's going to be approach, and that has to do with the mind.
Well, arguably, and again, arguably because everybody will give you a different answer about the greatest pitcher ever, but the guy that's rated right up there is Sandy Koufax. And in one of the books done about him, he said he had his best stuff 25% of the time. The great stuff was 25% of the time, leaving him 75% of the time to find a way to win with less than his best. And he was one of the greatest ever. You can imagine the just average pitchers and how often they have their great stuff, and then how difficult it will be until they learn some tricks to win with less than their best.
Well, I faced Koufax, so I can attest to that.
He was something.
That's an understatement.
Yeah.
That's off the plate, that changeup. But I know one thing, as I said last night, driving home the night before, trying to figure out if I'd ever seen a better right-handed curveball than Kluber's. And I came to the conclusion I hadn't. Conclusion that I just have never seen a better right-handed curveball than he had the other night.
Well, he talked after the game, and he said that it wasn't a whole lot different than he was doing early in the season. It's just that he made a minor adjustment. That's really the whole secret.
There's a change
on strikes, but the whole secret is making that minor adjustment, which allows you to get back to that great curveball, which it can't be any better than he threw the other night.
No, it's when you get a pitch that's unhittable, it can't get any better. And Chris Sale was just dealing. As you look at Corey Kluber, who had last 2 starts, he's had 30 strikeouts. Got a 12 of us the other night. Previous start had 18. Alexei takes strike 1. He's 0 for 8 in the series, looking for his first knock. He's 4 for 9, though, lifetime against Sean Mark. And the count 0-2.
Markham originally a 3rd-round draft pick in 2003 by the Toronto Blue Jays. He was the 80th player chosen overall, so he was very highly thought of. He's had some injuries and some surgeries during the course of his career that set him back.
Out and around it. The change. That was some kind of duel.
Chris with Jeff Samardzija, Johnny Danks, that's 60% of the starting rotation sitting there.
You know, most of the pitchers that I've talked to over the years, though, there's been quite a few. The majority of them said they had their best stuff like 40% of the time. And the rest of the time they had to really scuffle. And as you well know, if you got to have your good stuff and your good control to win a major league ball game, you're not going to win a whole bunch of games. As he gets him, so a couple of strikeouts. He now has 3, and after 2, no score.
you know, her husband, Tyler Flowers, and Nancy's involved with a wonderful charity. They're going to celebrate Southpaw's 11th birthday. And in celebrating the 11th birthday, you're going to collect new unwrapped toys prior to the Saturday, June 6th game. Tell us a little bit about it and the fact that now that Jen Konerko is no longer here, the duties fall to you to talk all about this.
They do, they do. Thank you so much for having me, of course. We are just inviting everybody to come to that Saturday game. It's a 6 o'clock game, June 6th. And like Steve said, it's Southpaw's 11th birthday, and as part of the festivities, we're going to be having a big birthday party. All of the wives have gotten together, and we're inviting all of the families and the kids from the Ronald McDonald House to come celebrate with us. And if you guys don't know, the Ronald McDonald House is an amazing organization. They're kind of like a home away from home. If there's families with kids in the hospital, they come to the area. They supply a place to live, but also a community and a support system while the kids are here. So in conjunction with the birthday party, we're asking all of you, our amazing fans, to come to the game and bring a new unwrapped toy. We'll collect them at the gates, and that's, again, Saturday, June 6th. And when we collect them, then they'll go straight to the Ronald McDonald House, and we'll give them back to the kids who really need them, who need something to cheer them up. If you can't make it to the game, you can always drop off the toy at the Chicago Sports Depot anytime that week, June 1st through the 6th. And then also, I know you guys are super busy, so if you can't make it to the toy store, bring in any cash donation and we can go shopping for you. Pick out a toy. And thanks to you guys, what we'll do is a raffle. So anybody who comes and brings a toy, or if you bring any cash donation, $10 or more, we'll put your name in a raffle, and you can get some really cool game-used memorabilia, and also the players will autograph some stuff for you. So it's really a win-all for everybody. You know, come to a game, make a kid happy, and get some cool baseball stuff.
And once again, that's June 6th. You're celebrating Southpaw's birthday. That's good because Southpaw's 11. So certainly on a birthday celebration, you're going to have a good time. And the charity, the Ronald McDonald House, is a wonderful charity. And hopefully all of you are familiar with it. If not, realize that you're helping some families in, well, their hour of need. They come here. They're given a place to stay while their child is in the hospital. And I can't think of anything better than that. So congratulations. I hope all things work well. You did, by the way, an outstanding job in this, your initial television outing.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for being up here, and hope you guys are really successful.
Thank you. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Want to know the count? One out here in the top of the third inning. Had a 31-minute. Nice job. 31-minute delay.
How about that? For the first time that she was ever on television, first time she ever looked into a camera. I'm hoping she doesn't want to go into sports broadcasting because she's pretty good.
Yeah, she is. All right. Ramirez picked up that stolen base back in the first inning, his 7th, and 8 attempts back then after he singled. Good job. 2-1.
Gallos is eventually going to hang that leg and get a look at the base runner to make sure he doesn't get a running start. That's going to make him more effective at holding runners close, because right now they're seemingly able to read it because they're getting some running starts.
Well, guys who can hold that front leg just for that 1 second.
Make it really difficult to run.
It's tough.
You just have to make sure you don't swing the leg back over the pitching rubber. If you do that, you have to go home. If you swing it back over the pitcher's rubber and the umpire can see it, which he can because he's looking at the angle you're looking at right now, then it's a balk if you go to first base.
Granley can motor it. And they get it. I didn't think they could turn it, but they did. Nice. Double play, our 36th of the season, and we'll go to the bottom of the third.
play. Alexi to Carlos. He gets it away as quickly as you can to nail Brantley at first base. It looked like there was no chance of doing it. They were able to get it just for the third time this year. Brantley grounds into a double play. And what a job on both ends by Alexi and by Carlos. And that's a double play that probably should not have been turned, but was.
That looked like a Mazeroski type double play from Sanchez.
Speed Replay is brought to you by Xfinity, your home for the most live sports.
Tyler pops it up. Brandon Moss, and that's one out.
Every Monday this season, the White Sox will have a flash sale in which 200 tickets in select lower level seats will be available for just $10 for an upcoming game. Each sale runs for 24 hours or until they sell out. For full details, visit whitesox.com/flash sale.
Here's Sanchez. 1 for 6 in this series, and it was a pretty big hit.
A game winner.
Bottom of the 10th inning.
I think one of the things that Carlos is going to have to do just occasionally is start to lay down a bunt or two to make sure they're in. Right now they're way back on the right side. If he does that and he brings the corners in at least, he's got much more room to drive the ball through because he will be a pretty good hitter.
Well, where Kipnis is playing and Moss, he can just take it with him, and he's got a terrific chance of beating that out. He just gets it by the pitcher. I'll tell you, that off-speed stuff has given historically our club fits.
Especially when you don't slow down your motion. And Markham doesn't. That's been the secret of his changeup. That's always been a plus pitch for him. Now, with the fastball at just 86, he's got to really work around, make sure he doesn't make careless mistakes with the fastball. But that changeup is still as good as it's ever been.
Adam grounded out to Moss. Markham out of Excelsior Springs, Missouri. There's a strike. Way back. He looks up. You can put it on the board. Yes. A bomb off the bat of Adam Eaton. And it's 1-0 Sox. Mercy, that ball was killed.
Adam Eaton hits his first home run of the year, drives in his third run. His last home run was over a year ago. This looks like it's supposed to be a slider. It's supposed to be down and in. It didn't slide, and it wasn't down and in, but it was way back there.
That's one of the longest home runs we have seen hit by a left-handed hitter this year.
Well, he absolutely. It was a year in the making, a year plus. He saved up for it.
Melky takes a strike.
That is a very, very happy man. Now Mark Parent asking him if they're going to check the bat or something along those lines, because that was a blast. Adams a strong guy. His swing he uses pretty much left and center field. At that time on the slider he was able to get the head out and take it into the night. counted at 404. Might be underestimated a touch.
That's one of the longer ones we've seen hit by a left-handed hitter here this year.
That was a blast.
Ramirez got a good arm. Gets him. Top of the fourth inning in a 1-0 Sox lead. Ryan Rayburn. One hopper foul as he yanks it.
This Cleveland Indians team is a much better group against a right-hand starter. They're just 5-10 against lefty starters this year. And they were able to win the ball game last night despite not really doing much to Jose Quintana. He went 7 innings, gave up a couple of runs, and got the loss.
Well, there are not a whole bunch of teams that have winning records against left-handed starters. Yes, he did. He gone. That's why left-handers are in such demand.
Well, in this team especially, when you take a look at Santana, who hasn't played because of back issue, all his 4 home runs have come as a left-hand hitter. Brantley is a good hitter, but much more effective, especially power-wise, against a right-hand starter. Same thing with Kipnis. And so they just don't have the firepower when they're facing a left-handed starter. And you're not going to find teams with more left-handed rotation than we have.
Well, we got 4 out of the 5, and we talked about it. I don't know when it was last week. I don't care if there are 5 left-handers or 5 right-handers, as long as they're good. But if I had 5 equal left-handers, 5 equal right-handers, I want the left-handers. Yeah, the perfect world in Major League Baseball, in the culture of the game today, with the bullpens being the name of the game, not starting pitching, not hitting, bullpens. And you got to be able to cover the last 9 outs. If you can't do that, you're going to lose. But the first rule in baseball is catch the ball. If you can do that and you got a good bullpen, you got 3 left-handers out there in that pen, that's the perfect thing in the perfect world.
But there's another factor when you use a left-hand starter, and that is mostly you're going to face a right-hand lineup. So if you do that, most of your relief pitchers are going to be right-handed. They don't have the left-handers
That's high, and that's going foul. And Souvenir.
Unless they want to make a wholesale switch with your first right-hander out of the bullpen, which many managers don't want to do, you have a very big advantage.
Well, that's one of the reasons I say that if perfect world, 3 left-handers in the pen.
Well, if you could do that, and very few teams have 3 quality left-handers in their bullpen.
The last 10 team that I can recall had 3 quality left-handers in the bullpen, won 116 ball games.
You're talking about the Seattles.
That's it. Yes, that's ball 4. They had 3 quality left-handers out there, and they won 116 ball games because every game was a 6-inning game. And if they wanted to run left-handed pitch inning up there after their starters were right-handed, which is all they had left.
Well, don't forget Uncle Lou Piniella, who was the manager of that 116-win Seattle team, also went to Cincinnati, where he had the Nasty Boys, and it for sure was a 6-inning game.
Well, that's why the pen started a long time before people started to realize that the game had changed.
That was 1990.
It had gone from you're only going to go as far as your starters will take you. For 100 years, that was a mantra in baseball. To you're only going to go as far as your bullpen will take you.
Well, 1990, when Lou had Norm Charlton, Randy Myers, and Rob Dibble coming out of that bullpen in whatever order he decided to put them out of that, it was very much like the Kansas City bullpen of last year. If you got the lead through 6, you could phone in the rest of the game. There was no scoring from the pen.
That's the perfect world, but there's not too many things in this game in the perfect world. The other side of that page, if you got one left-hander out there and he's just a so-so left-hander, it more or less says he cannot check it up, just fouls it off. You can't have just one. You got to have 2 mediocre left-handers out there. To this day, I will never understand how Andrew Miller got away from Baltimore.
Well, it's getting away one thing. I'm kind of surprised that the bidding war didn't go a little higher than it was.
Boy, look at this. Another one in the hole turn. Another good turn by Sanchez. And there you see he's going to get a little love from Alexei. And we'll go to the bottom of the 4th.
Your local nationwide insurance agent serving the area for 37 years. To visit the nation, visit jeffvook.com because Nationwide is on your side.
Here's Abreu. He went out to center field. Takes ball one. LaRoche on deck. And Avi in the hole. That pitch is off the plate, called a strike.
That last double play turned was a good one. The double play turned before was a great one, but both of them were turned very quickly and very well by Ramirez and Sanchez in the middle. This is the second of two double plays. This one has Aviles going up the line. He's not quite as fast as Brantley, but Carlos gets rid of it, comes straight over the top, pours it across with a step to spare. It was an eyelash to spare in the Brantley double play.
The 1-2 pitch. Hard to pick it up. One out.
81 miles an hour with the same release point as the fastball.
He's got 5 strikeouts.
It's pretty amazing. You can tell why he's 4-0 a lifetime against the Sox. But at his best, that changeup was impossible to pick up. And there was a wider disparity between the changeup and the fastball. Now there's only 5 miles an hour between the two, and still it's effective.
High pop up.
If you're a college grad or you're a college student interested in a career in the sports industry, then attend the White Sox Career Fair on Friday, May 22nd. Network with representatives from top sports organizations and stay to watch the game. Admission includes both a fair and a game ticket. To purchase, visit whitesox.com/job.
Ivy fly deep to center field, taking Bourne back on the track. And in 50-degree weather, no wind factor. The ball just doesn't carry here, or not too many parks. Two and one. If you're just joining us, our lone run last inning was a tremendous bomb off the bat of Adam Eaton.
His first home run of the year.
Out and around. And that'll retire the side. We're into the 5th, leading 1-0. 1-0. Top of the 5th inning. Brandon Moss, Brett Hayes, and Michael Bourne face Carlos Rodon. Slider, no. And there's the strike. 1-1 to count. Brandon, 6 homers, 24 knocked in. And here's a slider strike. This guy's a good hitter. Started off great last year. Looked like he was going to hit 40 or 50.
Had a hip problem, and that really did him in the second half of the year. At 22 in the first half, hit 3 in the second half.
Yep. It's hard to hit when you got a hand problem, foot problem, hip problem. 1 out.
Pretty low pitch total at this point. So even though he's walked 3 guys, he's done it with a minimum of pitches.
Change up down low. Brett Hayes. He lined out hard to Adam in center field. And the count 2-0. Now he is set. Tomorrow night, Johnny Danks against Danny Salazar.
Hayes this year has a couple of home runs and 5 driven in against left-handers. Right-handers, he's had a tough time of it.
You find yourself a right-handed hitter that hits left-handed pitching well. Get it.
Yeah, he'll be around for a bit.
Get it. That's popped up into short center field. Adam coming on.
Sox fans, join us on Saturday, May 23rd at 3:10 as your White Sox take on the Minnesota Twins. Arrive early as we retire Paul Konerko's number 14 in a pregame ceremony. First 20,000 fans receive a Paul Konerko replica statue presented by Xfinity. Xfinity, your home for the most live sports. Purchase tickets today by visiting whitesox.com or calling 866-SOX-GAME.
Michael Bourne struck out on a slider. 2-0 the count.
What's surprising with Bourne is that he has a very difficult time bunting. And with the speed he still possesses and the great speed he used to have, you would think it went hand in hand, but seemingly it doesn't.
There's a strike. Come back and get him now, Carlos. So the base hit, the count got him. Bourne, who at one time you expected him to run every time. He's just 2 for 5 in stolen bases.
Looking for a fastball, 3-1. He got it, took it through the right side, and the Indians have been running tonight. They've swiped a couple in 2 attempts.
Kipnis has struck out and grounded out to his counterpart, Sanchez. Outside edge of the corner. 1-1 to count. Hooks that one. So a 2 out, 1 on. The count is 1-2 to the Northbrook native, Jason Kipnis. All right, Alexi standing right there. He'll step on the bag, and that'll retire the side. So we're halfway home. We lead at 1-0.
White Sox debit card. Only available at your local Wintrust Community Bank. Go to wintrust.com/White Sox to learn more. Wintrust Community Bank, member FDIC.
Connor Gillespie will lead us off here in our half of the 5th inning. We lead at 1-0. Connor struck out on the changeup, lines that one into center field for a base hit. Just a third hit.
Yeah, the third hit, 2 singles and a home run, as this one hangs up over the plate. Not his best changeup. He's varying speeds on that. That at 77. And a good way to start the 5th as the Sox look for a little insurance.
Alexei. Alexei struck out his first trip. Takes that pitch inside. Castellanos just had a bases clearing triple to give the Tigers a 5-2 lead over Milwaukee. Outfield straight up, spread out, just about equidistant. There he goes. And that pitch is popped up. Brantley.
Visit participating Chicagoland Great Clips salons by June 5th for a Great Clips Summer Sweepstakes. The grand prize winner will throw out the first pitch at Mullet Night on Friday, June 19th, plus White Sox tickets and a pregame patio party included in the prize. Purchase your tickets today by visiting WhiteSox.com or calling 866-SOX-GAME.
Here's Tyler. Tyler fouled out to Brandon Moss at first on the first pitch he saw. I love the hit and run when you got a guy out there who's got a good changeup, and he's predominantly a changeup or an off-speed pitcher.
It forces your hitter to stay back.
That's why I love it.
And also, it's best when you have one guy at first that is not a speed burner.
Pretty good pitch right there.
They mark him a little unhappy he didn't get that one, but it evens the count of 1-1, and that had the inside corner. Markham does not like to call a Dale Scott.
That ball hit hard into left field, but Brantley makes the catch. Does a hang wolf 'em for Tyler.
The reason why Markham's pitch count is where it is in the mid-60s is that he hasn't walked anybody. He's not going to strike out a whole lot of people if you don't walk anybody, and obviously limit him to just 3 hits. That pitch count is going to be down. This is a very good Cleveland Indian bullpen.
Yeah, it is. It's a good Cleveland bullpen that has not been good for a while now.
It's true.
Just like we were a good ball club that played terrible baseball for a while early. Sanchez off the end of the bat. Ramirez on the move. Makes a nice play to get him, and that'll retire the side. So we've completed 5, and we lead it 1-0.
6:15 is your White Sox take on the Tigers. Also, the first 5,000 kids ages 13 and under will receive a White Sox Kids XL hoodie presented by Aquafina. Purchase your tickets today by visiting whitesox.com/promos.
First pitch, ball 1 to Ramirez, the shortstop, who is 1 for 1, a walk, a stolen base, and a single. That evens the count at 1.
Keep that 1-0 lead. You certainly want to retire Ramirez for the first time tonight.
And the count 1-2. Gap out there in left center. Fired into the seats. Souvenir. .50 degrees as we speak. Brantley on deck, Rayburn in the hole.
Tried to heat him upstairs with that one. That's one of his better fastballs tonight. Doesn't have the real big one at 97 that he's had, but he's kept a lot of them in good spots.
Dreaded leadoff walk. Fourth walk issue. So here's Brantley. Brantley has popped up and hit into a 6-4-3 double play.
Sandy Alomar in your picture, the coach at first. Mike Sarbaugh, the coach at third.
There he goes. Safe. So another stolen base. There's their third, and that's now 8 for 9 for Ramirez.
That head first dive to the back of the bag, which is exactly what you want to do. Make sure that the tag has further to go. He gets a great jump. And the hand is in just before the tag.
Brantley's got a job to do.
The advantage here for Brantley is that very difficult to strike him out. In fact, this entire season, 8 strikeouts in 125 at bats.
Two and one. Field playing him straight up. Eaton just a couple of steps over towards Melky and left. And that strike makes it 2-2. Short lead. And he goes full to Brantley. Payoff pitch, a big pitch. He gone. 95 on the fastball.
Kept it in a good spot. He threw it low and in. Brantley is surprised he got it by him. He's looking back at Rodon, wondering how he missed this one, but probably looking for anything out away. Didn't get it. That ball had a lot of life on it. That was a big, big strikeout.
Here's Rayburn, a walk and a strikeout.
Sanchez is going to have to make sure that he keeps Ramirez relatively close at second base.
He's got a short lead, and he takes ball one, does Rayburn. And a reminder, the Sox will hold an exclusive autograph session on Sunday, this coming Sunday. Tickets are just $25 and includes one ticket to that event and one lower box ticket to the game. And the autograph session starts at 10:15. That's this Sunday. Children's autograph session. And the count 2-0. This is when the hitter got a young left-hander out there on the mound. He's already walked 4 guys. Get down a run. He's got a 2-0 count. Feels pretty good about himself. Can't get that one at 94.
That time he expanded his zone. You're looking to be a zone hitter in that situation, and what you prefer would be middle in. But that ball was up and out of the strike zone. There you see number 3 where it popped up. Probably not the pitch that he would like. But he got it, swung through it.
That's when you're feeling good about yourself. It doesn't have to be a strike. But I'm sure he's a little upset with himself that he swung at that particular one. Oh, yeah. So he helped him out. Now he's back even in the count.
Swings at one out of the zone and then takes one right down the middle.
Well,
that's rare for Rayburn against our ball club.
I like to have a dozen golf balls for every time I've done that. Two-two pitch. That one at 96. Downstairs.
Nick Swisher, a very inviting double play target. He's in the on deck circle. Double play will be a moot point if you can retire Rayburn.
Payoff. So the second walk of the inning, 5th of the game.
And here comes Don Cooper.
No activity down in our pen. And while he makes his way out, the reminder, White Sox will honor former captain Paul Konerko this Saturday by retiring his number 14 jersey, doing a special pregame tribute. Parking lots will open at 11 a.m. Gates will open at 1:10 p.m. and fans are encouraged to be in their seats by 2:25 p.m. And standing room only tickets are available. So Coop has his say. And he's got some chunking to do now. Walk 2 this inning. Swish it into a 6-4 fielder's choice, and also he drew a walk. Outfield straight up. And he takes ball 1. Now we got some activity.
Jake Petrichka loosening up in the pen.
And that evens the count. Swish had both knees cut on this winter. This past winter. Off season. And the count 2-1.
He is a dead pull hitter from the right side. That's why Gillespie is over toward the line. Alexi, as you can see, a little closer than he would normally be to the third baseman.
And there is a base hit. So now they're going to hold Ramirez as Adam quickly gets to it. And a good thing they did, because he hits the cutoff man, and he'd have been a gone goose had he tried to score. But meanwhile, bases loaded. The 2 walks, one at third, one at second, and Swisher, who singled.
Well, no way Ramirez can take off, because he doesn't know if this line drive, which was up in the strike zone, is going to carry all the way out to Eaton. As it turned out, it sunk in front of him. But Adam does a nice job of getting the ball back in and making sure that everybody stays exactly where they are.
Well, there are some center fielders out there that Sauerball is going to run on in that same situation, but not on Eaton. So here's Aviles, a single, and he'd hit into a 6-4-3 double play. Sox have turned 2 of them.
Aviles is grounding into 5 double plays this year.
That pitch is just off the plate. One 3-0 for us, 0-4-0 for them, but Sox packed with tribesmen. 1 out.
Excellent speed at third. If there's a fly ball, it's going to be really tough to deal with Ramirez as he tries to score. Rayburn adequate at best, and Swisher with those surgically repaired knees, not too much at first base.
And that ball hit hard. Melky is there, makes the catch, and this game is tied at 1. As Ramirez, who walked, comes around to score.
Fortunate part about that one was it was hit right at Cabrera, because it was a rocket. And for Aviles, he drives in just his 5th run of the year. So leadoff walk. A very fast man comes back to haunt Carlos.
Moss has popped to second and gone out to center softly. Takes that fastball at 93 right there. That's wheelhouse for Moss.
Double-barreled action as Dan Jennings joins Jake.
2-1 pitch. That ball hit deep in the left field. Melky, right there in front of our pen, makes the catch. So he walks a couple. They do get one, and we're tied at 1.
$97999 right now for your chance to win 6 meals from the Simple 6 menu from Subway. Message and data rates may apply. Subway, eat fresh.
Top of the order for us here in the bottom of the 6th inning in this 1-1 tie. Adam Eaton, he's 1 for 2. Fakes a bunt, takes a strike, and here's what he did last time up.
It's our 4th drive of the game, and it is a bomb. His first home run of the year, his first home run in over a year. He saved it up because he hit the daylights out of that one.
That's a souvenir off the facade of the upper deck, down into the lower bowl, and scuffled for. 0-2 the count. Final from Baltimore. Seattle beats the Orioles 4-2. Detroit beats Milwaukee 5-2. That bases clearing triple by Castellanos in the bottom of the 8th inning. That's high and wide. Top of the 11th in Pittsburgh, tied at 3 with Minnesota. Got him, he knew it. Six strikeouts for Markham. Here through 5 1/3.
Craft and guile. Because his fastball stopping out at 86, but he's moving it around, changing speeds, throwing a good straight change and a good cutter.
There's a strike. It's just a good lesson for all the youngsters out there who are not hard throwers, who want to play in the big leagues. You don't have to, but you better have a good changeup and you better have good control.
Well, there's a perfect example, because that was an 86-mile-an-hour fastball, and a very good left-hand hitter, Melky Cabrera, was way late, because he's been shown a steady diet of 72-mile-an-hour curveballs, 80, 79-mile-an-hour straight changes. But all of a sudden, 86 looks like 96.
Off the plate. Brady on deck. And that's a souvenir. Markham making his first start. And he has acquitted himself very well through the first 5. 2-2. That ball hit hard in the center field, but Michael Bourne is there. 2 down. And here's Abreu. He's gone out to center and struck out on a changeup. That's low. Nice pick by Aviles. Plenty of time. And we have concluded 6, tied at 1.
Let's step into this one. His ERA up close to 6, on for the 16th time. But the batting average against is .226, which shows you that he had one very bad outing, and that accounts for most of that earned run average. So he comes into this after pitching an inning in last night's game. It was a perfect inning with a strikeout. And now he has the ball game in his hands.
Brett Hayes, Michael Bourne, Jason Kipnis.
Carlos Rodon was awfully good. 6 innings, just 1 run, 4 hits. He walked 5, fanned 4. And all the hits were singles.
Well, it just goes to show you what kind of ability, what kind of stuff he has. It's just that simple. He is going to be a monster once he feels comfortable. Once he looks in that mirror, and that mirror tells him, young man, you can throw strikes. And that will happen. And when it does, just wrap it up.
And what I liked about him tonight is that he was throwing that fastball at 92, 93. He had 95 or 96 in his pocket when he had to go back to it. But he was trying to get the ball over early in the count, walked more guys than he would have liked. But his stuff is so good that guys just don't square up the baseball very well. They turned a couple of excellent double plays behind him, but he still went 6, gave up a run, and that's a whale of a performance.
Well, I'm sure if you go down and talk to him and ask him right now, he'll feel a little bad about those 5 base on balls. But he's young, he'll learn, and he knows he has better control than that.
Yeah, there was only one to start an inning, and unfortunately it cost him the run.
But he knows he is better than that.
He'll figure it out. It's very difficult for young pitchers to come in and consistently keep everything in the zone.
I like his chances.
You're not picked 1-3, third pick in the first round without being really good.
Well, there have been a lot of 1-1s that weren't very good.
They might have been good when they got drafted.
Yeah.
Something happened to them, and all of a sudden, not much.
Carlos is, well, he's got the stones for it. That's what impresses me. Hayes with a 2-2 count. Hayes is lined to center, and he has popped up to center.
Michael Bourne, who had one of the 4 hits against Rodon in the on-deck circle.
The guy that I talked to that caught Carlos, can't remember his name, said, oh, he's got great stuff, but the best asset he has is those stones. He's got big ones. Full count. Helped him out right there. Souvenir right side. And there's the dreaded leadoff walk.
Provide your guests with the ultimate all-inclusive White Sox experience in the Home Plate Club or Magellan Scout seats. These 2 premium seating areas are the best way to entertain your most important clients, employees, friends, or family. For more information, call 312-674-1000 or visit whitesox.com/premium seating.
Michael Bourne, a strikeout and a single. Gillespie on the grass, coming in as he squares the bunt, draws it back and takes the strike.
When you're not a particularly good bunter, and Bourne has just one sacrifice this year, you have a tendency to pop up the baseball, and that's why pitchers are taught in a bunt situation, throw a high fastball. Help him out with that pop-up. Tyler just called for a sinker.
Well, the runner is not afforded protection on a bunt pop-up, but today it's almost a lost art. And by that I mean watching the hitter. If he pops it up, if he's bust out of there, go ahead and make the catch. If he doesn't, let it drop and you got a chance to get a double play. But it's almost a lost art now. That used to be worked on in spring training, and not anymore by anybody.
Duke and Petrichka.
1-1 to count.
Warren taking a long look down at Sarbaugh. Goes through his set of signs.
Big pitch. Outfield in unison, swung around to the left a little bit. There's a bunt. They're going to go to second base, and he throws it away. So now Hayes could not hardly get up.
No, that was a big break at second because that ball was behind him, and he saw that it was going into center field. He would have been at third, except that he got turned around. This is not a good throw. And Hayes sees it and then stumbles around the bag. So the only silver lining to this one is that he stumbles right there and has to stay at second.
So the leadoff walk, the bad throw, and we got troubles here in the top of the seventh. Nobody out. And that'll be a sacrifice fielder's choice. Kipnis 0 for 3. He squares the bunt. And that's a good one. That's a very good one. And a very nice play by Gillespie. Wow. But he knew the ball was going to stay fair because this is his home turf.
That's a perfect bunt by Kipnis, and I think he is shocked that the ball beat him to first base. But Connor Gillespie makes maybe his best play of the year because Kipnis can really run. He lays down a perfect bunt. Now, had he been beating it out of the box, he probably would have beat it at first base. But you take a look back, he's looking at the ball. He is not running full go. If he does, there's no way to get him at first base. It was still a great play, but Kipnis doing his own umpiring. Just they'll tell you if it's foul. And there's another break.
Terrific play by Gillespie. Ramirez, a walk last time up, a walk the previous time, a single his first at bat. Infield in, he takes outside. He also has 2 stolen bases and has scored the 1 Cleveland run.
Ramirez has 2 sacrifice flies this year, one of them coming in the 3rd inning of the opening game of the series. With runners at second and third and 1 out, Cleveland has chased home at least once, 72% of the time. League average 64%. Sox pitchers below league average in this category. That's good.
2-0 pitch. It's 3-0.
Not being able to pitch to this guy with that guy, Michael Brantley, in the on-deck circle is not a good thing.
Three balls and a strike. And there's a base hit. So the leadoff walk comes around to score. 2 leadoff walks in the last 2 innings have come around to score, and they lead at 2-1.
That little guy's been on 4 times, and coming into this series hitting 168, he has had just an all-world series. He doesn't get a whole lot of this one. Just eases it through the left side. Pass are drawn in infield. That's the problem when you have to draw them in. There are no angles for a ground ball at all. So runners at the corners. Still only 1 out. Only now the Indians lead.
Those leadoff walks will absolutely get you a lot of canceled checks.
They did it tonight. 2
well,
leadoff
last
walks, 2
night we
runs.
gave them 2 runs last night too. 2 plays that should have been 2 balls that should have been caught in the air. We're not. Oh, we might still be playing that one. Brantley 0 for 3. Two and 0. Three and 0.
There's a very good chance that Terry Francona, who has done this many times, will allow his best hitter to hit 3 and 0. He's pretty sure to get a fastball.
Taking all the way right there. 3 and 1 to count. A walk. A throwaway into center field. On a sacrifice, another sacrifice, and then the RBI single. Big pitch, the 3-1. And that's trouble. That's going to score them both. We're just beating ourselves tonight as we did last night.
Brantley drives in runs number 24 and 25. He got the count very much in his favor. Pretty much figuring he was going to see a fastball. He saw one, and he drilled it.
So they have come up with 3 runs. Robin coming out. It's a 4-1, 4-6-0 for them, 1-3-0 for us as Jennings departs, and we'll be back.
Marlins hitting a pretty high 357 against him. He inherits Michael Brantley at second base. It's now a 4-1 Indian lead. And he's going to have to face a pinch hitter. Murphy coming out to pinch hit for Rayburn, whose night is done. A couple of walks. Rayburn was 0 for 1 with a strikeout. And there's David Murphy, who they got as a specialist against the right-handers. Here's a right-hander, and here's Murphy.
Three in, one out. Brantley at second. And that's out and around. It chops it foul. And the count 0-2. Just got a piece of it. High and wide, 2 balls, 2 strikes.
Indians got Murphy off a bad year with the Texas Rangers. He had a good year in 2012 and 2013. He dropped to 220. And then they got him as a specialist. And he had a pretty decent year last year overall, hitting 262.
That's foul back. He gone. 2 down.
This was supposed to be a backdoor slider. He took a little something off, and Murphy just swung right through it.
So here's Swisher. He's 1 for 2. A ground out. A fielder's choice, 6-4. A walk and a single.
Now Nick will turn around and hit from the side where he's been consistently weaker.
Takes ball 1.
Swish hitting only 154 as a left-hand hitter this year. Came in hitting 333 as a right-hander. Went 1 for 2 from the right side with a walk.
Evens the count. 4-6-0 for them, 1-3-0 for us. First game was just absolutely sensational. One of the best games we've seen in a long time. And last night we made a couple of mistakes. Quintana pitched well. Pitched very well.
You can pretty much say that over the course of the last 3 years. Yet you look at his record, 24 and 26 lifetime. Yet he's one of the toughest left-handers around. His luck has been abysmal.
It's been almost unbelievable.
he throws well, doesn't get a whole lot of runs or some defensive miscues, or the bullpen has just let him down on occasion. But it hasn't been his fault. He's done a real good job.
Full count.
They tell you it's going to even out, but unfortunately waiting for it to even out is very frustrating. Here's a look at Jose, who's one of the better pitchers around, especially one of the better pitchers with an under 500 record.
Little slow roller. So Jake comes in, shuts them down, but they come up with a crooked number. 7th inning stretch. We trail at 4-1.
It's a 4-1 game. Indians about hit the Sox 6-3. It's been an errorless game as David Murphy stays in the game in right field after pinch hitting. Sean Markham is still in the game after throwing a brilliant 6 to this point. He's got a 3-run lead. His first lead of the night.
All right, boys, let's get something going. Let's give them a thrill right here. LaRoche, Garcia, Gillespie. Markham, 1 run, 3 hits, no walks, 6 strikeouts. Count evens at 1. Ramirez. One out.
Indian bullpen is throwing for the first time as Markham in this his first start of the year. And certainly unfamiliar territory. In fact, they actually chose and who they wanted to keep and who they wanted to let go between Bruce Chen and Sean Markham. They chose Sean Markham. Nick Hagedorn, the left-hander. Zach McAllister, who's been in one game and throwing now in all 3 games, up in the pen.
Avi is 0 for 2. First time up on a normal evening. Hit a ball out there in center field. But he just did get him. It normally would have been out of here, but he caught it. 2 down quickly.
I love the hustle of first base because on a routine ground ball to third, Avi was not taking anything for granted. And if Aviles had bobbled it at all, he would have beaten it at first base.
I think there were a few guys a few guys, including a lot of fans, but a few guys who were getting tired of seeing guys not busted down the line. That can define a ball club. That can define an organization.
That time it was full go.
Here's Gillespie, 1 for 2. And it starts in the minor leagues. Boy, I used to play against some guys, some clubs in the minor leagues. I mean, every time they were getting it down that line.
That puts a lot of pressure on the infielder especially. I mean, if he knows that there's no margin for error, he's going to be forced to make the occasional mistake.
Well, you've got to be in an organization that starts at the minor league level, and they insist on it. And if they don't, then grab some bench. That's the only way you can penalize guys today, is don't play them. And then the marginal guys, you release them. You don't want that bad influence. But the funny thing about it, a lot of times the marginal guys are the ones who will do it all the time anyway.
Well, they have to stay
They
around.
have to.
Then you have to teach the guys who come to your organization what's acceptable and what's not.
Well, you know yourself, you play against guys in minor leagues when you and I, our time zone, Dodgers, Phillies, that ball hit deep. Way back. Murph just looks up. You can put it on the board. Yes. And it's a 4-2 ball game.
Second home run of the year, 10th driven in. Both runs scored courtesy of the long ball, and neither one a cheapie. As Adam Eaton homered in the third, Connor Gillespie here with 2 outs in the 7th. And this one is going to drive Markham from the mound. Our Mazda replay. It's on the inner third, and a no-doubter. So Terry Francona comes out. That's going to be it for Markham, who will leave with the lead. As he walks out, we'll step out and be back after these messages. In the opener of this series, his ERA pretty good, under 3.5, on for the 16th time. Opponent's batting average a lot higher than he would like at .313. More times than not, he's a one-pitch pitcher. It's a big fastball. That's one of the reasons why he was moved from the rotation to the bullpen, and that's where he resides these days.
So 2 out. And here is Alexei. Alexei 0 for 2. Strikeout and a pop up to left field. That one at 95. Well, it's finding a guy's comfort zone. It's finding a guy's niche. You and I were talking about that in Milwaukee. Some guys just have a better feeling when they just go out there and all they got to do is just turn it loose.
Well, he's got a big fastball. There's never been any doubt about that. We saw him one time in this series. He walked the leadoff man. And that pretty much did him in, because a base hit by Gillespie. Then after a couple of outs, a line drive base hit by Sanchez, and that was the ball game.
Right side. And that'll do it. But we get the home run by Gillespie. We'll go to the 8th. It's a 4-2 Cleveland lead. Four-2 Cleveland lead. 4-6-0 for them. 2-4-0 for us. The base on balls tonight has really hurt us. Plus one miss. An errant throw. Missing a forced play at second base.
Monty Chisenhall coming on to pinch hit.
As he takes first pitch strike. Hitting Mike Aviles, who was 1 for 2 with a sacrifice fly. Very quickly to count 0-2. If you're just tuning in, Carlos Rodon went 6 innings, giving up 1 run, 4 hits, 5 walks, 4 strikeouts. But it was a good outing for him, even though there were the walks and everything else. He got some experience out there, and he's going to be a good one. Just that was a tribute with those 5 walks. Is he gone? Just on how good his stuff is.
He's going to get a no decision in this one, and you can really measure the performance, not necessarily by the walks, but you can measure it in how many guys are able to square up the baseball. Sometimes you go out and you have a game where there's a lot of line drives. You're not fooling a whole lot of people. That wasn't the case tonight. The Indians did not hit the ball hard in those 6 innings.
Well, that's a tribute to his stuff, Steve. I mean, the 5 walks, to me, I think it's a big tribute to that because of the fact only 1 leadoff walk scored. When you can walk guys and you're not having your good control night and you leave them on the base pass, that'll tell you something right there. Oh, the Squibber get fouled. It will. So Moss 0 for 3. A pop up to second, flied out to center, and went out deep to left field on a normal night, just like Avi Garcia's ball on a normal night. That ball that Moss hit to left field was out of here.
There's a very excited young man who's got a souvenir Brought his glove to the ballpark, and it paid handsome dividends.
They got the shift on. Gillespie out there in short right field. Gap in left center. And a 2-2 count to the 31-year-old veteran. And a full count. He gone. 2 down. So now Connor go back to his position. And that'll bring up catch Brett Hayes, who led off that 3-run 7th with a leadoff walk.
Pretty good movement tonight for Jake, as his fastball's moving in on the right-handers, and when he gets it down, it's sinking.
Right now at this stage of Jake's career, he just, in my opinion, he's just going to get better and better, and he's the perfect guy to come out there and handle the 7th for you. You can cover the 7th, 8th, and 9th, as we have witnessed from several clubs, especially Kansas City. You're going to be there at the end. If this bullpen of ours does what I think it's going to do, we will be in September there at the end, fighting for postseason. Softly hit. Right off the end of the bat. And a nice inning for the Jake Meister. So we go to the bottom of the 8th. We need 2 to tie.
Sox 6-4. It's been an airless game with Carlos Rodon going 6th, throwing the ball brilliantly. Jose Abreu trying to extend that 14-game hitting streak. He'll have another opportunity to do that. That's brought to you by the Honda Dream Garage Sales Event, now at your Honda dealer.
Tyler Flowers takes ball 1. Tyler 0 for 2 last time up. Lined out hard to Brantley in left field. There's Chiz at third base. There's the count, evens at 1.
Chisenhall has really improved the defense this year. Had some problems last year, but so far in 36 games, he's only made a couple of errors. That is a big improvement.
That's popped up right side. Murph coming in and Kipnis going back. Jason has it. Nice over the shoulder catch for out number 1.
Want to know where to find bacon on a stick when you're at U.S. Cellular Field? I know I do. Or you can track the Red Line trains after attending the game. You might want a seat upgrade. Download MLB.com Ballpark, the official U.S. Cellular Field app for iPhone and Android smartphones. Visit WhiteSox.com/ballpark app to learn more.
Start us off right here, Carlos, with 1 out, buddy. He's 0 for 2 tonight, which isn't all last year. I thought he broke the barrier, so to speak, got over the hump. He hit 280, 13 homers, drove in 59 in 142 games. And he's still very young.
He was their number 1, so they thought very highly of him. Right now, pretty much a platoon player.
Well, he's got a chance. He's got a chance to really be a good player. I mean, a real good player against right-handers and left-handers. He's in that same spot like a Trevor Plouffe was with Minnesota. He's in that window, 26, 27, 28. Plouffe now is 27, I believe, so he's starting to come out of it.
He's made himself a real good defender.
And Chisenhall's going to do the same thing, in my opinion. One and 2 the count.
Minnesota in a battle at Pittsburgh. They won the game 4-3 in 13 innings. It's a long way to go. Minnesota continues playing good solid baseball. They're 23-17. They're one of the big surprises this year.
Going to help him out. Full count.
And after this Cleveland series, Minnesota comes to town for a weekend series, finishing off the homestand.
There's a shot hit hard. Get down. No, it hangs up for him, so that's the hang with him for Sanchez.
Carlos hit that ball right on the button. Good play by Bourne, who got a very good jump on it.
So here's Adam, 1 for 3. His long home run in the 3rd inning. I mean, it was one of the longest we've seen by a left-handed hitter this year here. Good rip. Finale of this series tomorrow night. Johnny Danks against Danny Salazar. In that game, if you can't make it to the ballpark, will be over Comcast Sportsnet. Then over the weekend, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, highlighted Saturday by Paul Konerko Day, retiring number 14. But in that Minnesota series, they're going to run Phil Hughes, Trevor May, and Kyle Gibson out there. We're going to run Jeff Samardzija, Chris Sale, and Jose Quintana. Nice snap right there by McAllister. So a couple of balls hit hard. Meanwhile, 1-2-3 inning, and we're into the 9th.
and Game Zone banner for the latest stats and information. The Sox Game Zone is powered by Robert Morris University, Illinois. Over 55 athletic teams. That's more than any other university in the state. For more information on RMU, visit robertmorris.edu.
Michael Bourne will lead it off. Back to the top of the order with Kipnis and Ramirez.
Zach Putnam comes into the ball game. He's going to take over after a good performance by Jake Petrichka.
Yeah, that's a two-star performance. Jake Meister.
He came in, held him right there.
Well, he faced 5 guys and he got them all.
And Zach at 1-1, his ERA 5.14 on for the 16th time.
Gillespie on the grass. Brayu about a step and a half back of the line at first, and of the bag, I should say, and a few steps off the line. Two balls, 2 strikes. He gone. He knew it.
This one had the whole plate. It just freezes Bourne, and he takes a seat. Gibney's probably just happy to see a right-hander. Hector Noesi just getting a little work in case Zach Putnam has some problems.
Get over there. Good feed. 2 down.
The closer of the Indians, Cody Allen, is getting loosened up. He recorded his 7th save last night to preserve the win for Trevor Bauer.
He of the good stuff Allen family.
Well, when he was a starting pitcher, he didn't throw near this hard. Put him in the pen, and all of a sudden, here it comes.
Well, that's that attitude we were talking about. I said, I think 2 years ago when McAllister was pitching against us in Cleveland, I said, there is a 8th or a 9th inning guy in the waiting right there.
McAllister can make a real strong career for himself doing just what he's doing now.
That's right. Some guys are sprinters and other guys are 440 guys, and then you get the 880 guys. But how about last night? Some of the greatest goaltending I have ever seen, ever. Corey Crawford was out, just awesome, as was Henderson.
That whole game was one for the ages. When you take a look at exactly what happened, all the chances both teams have had, the point blank shots that were turned away by the respective goaltenders, and finally, deep in the 3rd overtime.
In my time zone last night, which was 2:09, the puck went in. That won the game. I stayed up and watched it. I could not leave it. As there's a strike. I was listening to it on the radio, and I just felt like it was right there on my way home. Felt right there in the ring, the arena. And then I ran and turned on the TV set. It just kept on going. Come on. He's there. Nice job for Zach. All right, boys. We need 2 to tie, 3 to win.
Demand in True HD over 400 mobile and connected devices. You get real-time highlights, live look-ins, pitch tracking widget, and more. Blackout and other restrictions apply, so visit MLB.tv for details. And now into the bottom of the ninth. In a 4-2 game, it's Cody Allen coming into this one. Cody at 0-2, his ERA, 6.46 on for the 17th time. Fairly deceiving numbers. He struggled for a while, but he's looking for save number 8. 10 walks and 15 in the third. That's been one of the problems. We didn't see a whole lot of that last night as he came on, struck out 3, struck out 2, and threw a perfect 9th inning. There's a young man, wants a rally. Could use a rally. Preferably a 3-run rally.
All right, here's Melky. 0 for 3 tonight as he takes ball 1. That one at 94. Four 6-0 for them, 2-4-0 for us. If you're just tuning in, we have given them a couple of runs tonight, just like we gave them a couple of runs last night in that 3-1 loss. That game last night broke our 6-game winning streak when we didn't give up any runs in that 6-game winning streak. Yeah, but that hockey game last night, John Weideman, Troy Murray, I felt like it was right there in the rink driving home listening to that.
I just was thinking as I listened to it before watching it on television how wonderful you have to be a hockey play-by-play man.
Well, one of my all-time favorite announcers, period, is Pat Foley. As that ball's hit hard, less another hang with him for Melky. I mean, how much hang with him can you stand? Man.
Melky's probably been hitting in the toughest luck of all of the Sox hitters this year.
No question.
Because he's hit some balls right on the screws, and it just seems whenever he hits it hard, there's somebody standing there.
Yeah, but I tell you, the Blackhawks got some terrific announcers. John Weideman, Troy Murray, and of course Pat Foley and Eddie. Those guys are awesome.
Pat and Eddie make a spectacular team, and I'm not sure there's any analyst anywhere in any sport better than Eddie Olczyk.
If you find one, let me know.
He is just outstanding, and the time frame to which he has to work to get everything in, he does just a remarkable job.
I loved it last night when John said, I got to stop and catch my breath. Loved it. So here's Abreu. And there's a base hit. Now that shot by Cabrera right at Michael Bourne.
It's also a 15-game hitting streak, and in the last chance to keep it alive, Jose does just that. More importantly is that it brings a tying run to the plate.
And we got the right man, Adam LaRoche. He's 1 for 3. And another right man coming out on deck. Takes that one at 96 upstairs.
That's going to send Hayes out to have a word with Allen.
He's got the catbird seat. 3-0. And that will put the tying runs aboard, and here comes Avi.
Let's see if Robin decides, and he does. He wants a pinch run for Adam LaRoche with Emilio Bonifacio representing the tying run. Emilio's going to loosen up on this very cold night, down 49 degrees. Mickey Callaway riding out to the mound to have a word with Allen, who's had control problems a good portion of this season. He just walked the tying run aboard. Dale Scott is going out there to break it up.
Avi has gone out deep to center. Twice he has gone out to third. And he takes ball one.
Allen's given up one home run this year.
He's got the catbird seat, and he has faced Cody in his young career 4 times, has 2 hits.
Well, they can be pretty well assured that he's going to see a fastball here. He got it, but that one was low and away. Probably as good a pitch as you could make throwing a fastball in a fastball situation. He threw it at the knees on the outside corner. Xfinity Pitch Tracks will show you that this is a real good pitch.
And he made a good swing at that ball, too.
I mean, he was trying to drive it where he should, into right center field.
He's got good plate coverage. Gillespie on deck. Big pitch. And that's ball 4. That'll roll him up. So here's Connor. He's 2 for 3, a single. And this is what he did last time up.
2 outs, nobody on in the 7th, and Sean Markham, the last pitch he threw tonight, went out of the ballpark. The 2nd home run of the year by Gillespie. He's got an opportunity here for a base hit with the speed of Bonifacio. Most likely it's going to tie it up unless it's a one-hop rocket into left field. Bradley's got the best and most accurate arm in their outfield. He certainly run on anybody else.
Pops it up. Two down, and it's left up to Alexei.
He got a good pitch to hit. He got a high fastball right down the middle and just popped it straight up. Lexi's had a tough night, but that can all come to an end here with a base hit anywhere.
Well, Alexei is a good fastball hitter against a guy who's a fastball pitcher. Breaking ball. Takes it for a strike.
The bases loaded over the course of his career. He's been pretty good. Excellent speed in the spots you need him. Well, second and first.
That was a big pitch right there. Get a breaking ball over. There's a chopper. Chopper Chisenhall. Now he's just going to hold it, so everybody's safe. And it's a 4-3 ball game.
He probably made the right choice, because on a slowly hit ball, there's no way you're going to get Ramirez with his speed at first base. So instead of letting it go and maybe throwing away the ball game, he held it. It's now a one-run game. Lexi stays right with that breaking ball, able to get just a piece of it, and then hustling down the line with everything he's got. Chisenhall playing deep as he should. Has no play anywhere. And Alexei knowing that he's got to beat this play. Joe McEwing telling Bonifacio, stay right here. The ball's still in the infield. He didn't want him to round the bag all that far.
So J.B. Shuck has come out to hit for Tyler. Sacks packed, 2 down, 1-run ball game.
There's another factor here, and that is 2 wild pitches from Allen.
First pitch strike. 96 on the outside edge of the outside corner, says Dale Scott. And that was a big pitch. Huge difference. 1-0 or 0-1. And the ball gets away, but not far enough. Meanwhile, the count 0-2 as he could not check it up on that breaking ball.
He's almost let that ball get away far enough for Bonifacio to score. We talked about the wild pitch. This one well in front of the plate. Watch Emilio. As soon as he hesitates, then he can't go. But he didn't know how far that ball was going to trickle away.
0-2 pitch. And this ball game is over. So we had a chance. We gave them a couple of more runs tonight like we did last evening. So that is not good. Meanwhile, they won it 4-3, and we'll be back.